It is brilliant to be here and very, very happy to have seen these two presentations because I will be picking up on a lot of the themes that were raised here and a lot of the conversations I've had a chance to take part on the table. It's coming, I was promised. While these slides load, I also want to acknowledge some of the people that I've seen in the room. I think a lot of us here have the responsibility of either teaching or supporting learning, of developing online or blended projects and programs, or QAing them. So I will try to make a case here for a process of co-creation and co-design, not only to improve the learner experience, to develop this social learning and collaborative learning skills, strategies like peer review that we just had a deep look at, but also as a process of empowerment for both academic staff and students at a particular point in the culture in the sector around online and blended learning. And I will try to build that case over some of the practical work that the Digital Education Studio has been doing, developing 5 programs in a short course over the last couple of years. So taking some lessons, some challenges, sharing them, and hopefully hearing back from you in terms of what resonates, what challenges are you also facing, and some of the different lessons that you might have picked up to share back, which would be lovely to kind of take. Next slide, please. Right, so a bit about the team. I'm a senior learning designer, so I'm one of those people on that board there. We're a multidisciplinary team. We have 3 senior learning designers, multimedia producers, UX and UI designer, interactive web designer, marketing specialists, people on the business side, project managers, etc. So we work as a team, and our core remit is program development at the Faculty of Medicine and Dentistry at Queen Mary. So that comes with a set of expectations and skills and approaches to the work that we do. And even though we do some work outside of program development, like consultancy on blended learning, virtual reality in healthcare and medicine, and a range of other projects around feedback and assessment, the core of our work is learning design and program development. So that's a unique kind of set of remit and ethos around the work that we do. And that's the experience that I'm here to share. So if you, brilliant. So I think I've covered most of that, but it's around the lessons learned and the lessons that we're still trying to learn that the presentation will try to focus on. Please. And next. So tell me if you recognize the situation post-pandemic. We've seen a boom in digital learning around offer of mainly master level programs, some undergraduate distance learning, a variety of greater offer across universities that traditionally didn't do it, including Queen Mary, that is, for example, launching its first undergraduate distance learning program. We've seen a boom in investment in infrastructure, digital learning teams, etc. And then you take a step back into those JISC student experience surveys, research, etc. And you see that that investment and that growth has not necessarily translated into more engaging, more active, better learner experiences or more satisfying learning experiences for students. So there's been a gradual increase in overall quality. Those UCISA reports, kind of read them throughout the years, you'll see. But in terms of the proportion of investment and work that we've done, that does not always necessarily translate into a better learner experience, right? And the reason for that is quite tangible. There are challenges here for staff and for students to combined generate better learner experiences, develop skills, take new approaches. So if you look into the variety of offer and some of the programs that are on the market, and you take a deep dive into each one of them, you will see a lot of existing approaches and skills and beliefs and values and ways of working that higher education institutions have applied to a growth in the offer that we're trying to do. And that does not always necessarily translate, particularly when you have institutions that are huge and people that have been working in a particular way and now are being asked to work in a different way without maybe necessarily the kind of the right transition and the right type of change to generate those active, social, collaborative, empowering learner experiences that generate inclusion for our students. So what are some of those challenges? And I'll try not to take too long on them because it's a bit theoretical. Next one. Before I go into the slides themselves, a step back to the Digital Education Studio. These are the 4 pillars of our, what we call our CARE approach to program development. So when I first read them, when I was joining the team, I thought they were very, very ambitious. They are not easy, right? But you cannot have a truly active learner experience if it's not relational. However good your cognitive load theory and your multimedia learning are, if relational pedagogy is not there, you're cutting your engagement down to a third of what it could be. That dialogue is not established. But we also know that mainly if you're a learning designer or if you teach online education, that social and collaborative learning are at the highest end of difficulty, and they take much longer and require much more skill to learn and to facilitate learning, right? So we're not shying away, we're putting that out there. So that's our ambition and our ethos and our challenge. Next slide, please. So like I mentioned, I won't take too long, but these were some hard-drawn lessons, for me at least, in terms of my experience of co-creating and co-designing these programs. The first is that there are things that are deeply systemic into the way that we work. Academic workload models, assessment workload models, existing skills, the way that program teams are structured, validation processes, professional identities, these things are systemic. And when you go into a co-creation project and a co-design project of bringing in professional services and staff and students together to develop a program or a learner experience, you are working in that context. It's important. You have to recognize that you might not be on solid ground. You're underwater. So you have to move around it. And if you want to make progress, you have to swim instead of run, right? So that was one of the first things that are important for us to pick up with. The second thing is around complexity. So I'm currently developing an undergraduate distance learning program. We are wrapping up the 6th module, and so far I've counted 40 members of academic staff in those 6 modules. They might just teach a week, but they make a meaningful contribution for a module, and working in these large teams with these large voices and skills and approaches is complex, and you have to be prepared into the way that you set your process of co-creation and co-design to deal with that complexity. You cannot endlessly discuss, endlessly idealize and not synthesize, but you cannot ignore these positions and these approaches to teaching and learning, right? So that's a degree of complexity that is important to kind of overcome. The third and fourth are at a double lock, right? Students go through most of their educational journey engaging in a particular type of learning, and they might be very, very successful at it. But social and collaborative and active learning are not skills they tend to develop outside of maybe something more like a lecture-based approach, right? All the way up to A level, you might be a very successful student enjoying a very important university by being very good at note-taking and synthesizing information and taking exams. And if you're asked to do something different, like peer reviewing, or engaging in discussion or debate, or collaborating on a joint artifact, that's a very different skill set, right? And if you are a student that's been successful in doing that, you might not respond. Hence, I think that difference between formative and summative, there's a capital there that we're saying this is more important than this. So they spend a bit more time and energy and risk. Because students go through that process, they come to us with those skills and those values and those beliefs. We try to innovate and do something different, and that is not always successful. So people revert back to their experience. And academic staff, I think, haven't had the chance to, post-pandemic, digest and improve and reflect on what works and doesn't for online learning. So up until a couple of years back, you would see a lot of master level programs that were repackaging of campus-based programs, and you still might. Whole attitudes and beliefs and values and ways of teaching were put to the service of developing that kind of digital learning experience, which is problematic because we are excluding those more complex learning experiences, which might be a problem if your learning aims or if the type of learner that you want relies on that kind of discussion, collaboration experience. So we're at a point where to break that cycle and to break those silos and those conditions without completely cutting off people from their experience and their values and their beliefs in the institutions and the context they're in, something needs to change, right? And particularly for us that co-create and co-design and are coming into a process that is maybe not immediately our own, we need to bring something that is of value if we weren't there. So I found myself almost every day in a situation where I have to kind of show what value I bring into a module team that has been teaching something very successfully for years, and I'm asking them to do maybe something differently because there is a need or a purpose for that difference and that change. So what have we done that has worked in some way or that we're still trying to finesse? At a starting point, 3 of our programs, myself and Tom and a colleague, have been asked to consult at the curriculum writing stage, and what a privilege that is. That makes the process of designing and then running the program, facilitating it and assessing much, much easier. The value of feedback-rich asynchronous learning, assessment design, programmatic approaches to skill development, the multiple circles of student support that you can weave into the curriculum, workload mapping. So if you can bring these voices, the value of information literacy and generative AI literacy, build that into the way that you design teaching and learning profiles, assessment profiles, workloads, number of credits. If you can work at that level, what a joy it is to pick up that curriculum and then co-create it. If you don't, you're always in a position where you might be adapting and tweaking and pushing what a coursework actually is and how you kind of translate that into a teaching approach. Something else that we found works quite well, particularly to deal with the complexity of the way that higher education works and program teams work, are programmatic design approaches. Programmatic level assessment, for example, is something that is a very interesting exercise to do. Not over-assessing, not relying on the same types of assessment. What works online, moving away from exams is still a bigger struggle than I think it should be. But if you're doing an online program, if you don't want to go down the route of proctoring, what is your assessment and how is that meaningful in this current world where there is a variety of challenges and so on. Facilitation and assessment design are also things that you can work tremendously and do. There's a tradition in kind of program development where you hand in a program that is finished and then once it starts running, you go away and you work on another. But if you have the privilege of supporting teams as they're teaching mostly asynchronous courses for the first time, and you see that process and you can work with them to build on those tools, that tends to have an immense impact on student engagement and attainment. And we've seen that as the weeks start progressing and people come back to us and we kind of consult on that approach and we help them design things as simple as when does a week start and how do you start the week? People are reluctant, what do I do? There's a dominant person in the social learning, how do I deal with that? That tends to be effective. There's a range of other things that I don't want to kind of spend too much time on, but if something catches your eye, do raise it as a question because they're all important to me, but we have kind of limited time here to do. But a shout out to our colleagues in the team that focus on multimedia production and building the tools that we have. I feel that digital learning sometimes has a lot to learn with cinema and the way that they work, and game companies and the way that they work. They build their own tech for the type of joy and flow they want to create. And we end up working a lot with out-of-the-box solutions that we can very minimally tweak. And having people on the team that can say, well, there is a practical lab experiment. How do we teach that online? And they go and work with us to film and edit and animate and build interactives in a way that works for an online setting without losing how inclusive that experience and empowering it. So we have learned a lot in terms of kind of building our own stuff as a way of overcoming, I cannot teach in this way. We say, we'll build it, and then you can. What have we heard so far in terms of impact? I will share some of that before I go into some of the things that we're still struggling with and some of the things that we're still trying to work out. Feedback has been mainly good. We have a few programs that have been running for a year now. And we're quite happy with that, but we're also kind of picking up on a lot of lessons. Both student comments and feedback and overall module assessment feedback and PTS has been really, really positive. And I'll start sharing some of the things that we're still kind of identifying and trying to overcome. I'll leave this for you to read. This is feedback from our staff as well that are a key part of this process. It has been a process of learning and of growing for them as well. And that's important for us to kind of document and share and reflect on. And yeah. And another one. Sorry, Julie. Yeah, perfect. So what are we still trying to work out and learn in this process? Workload mapping is an art form, right? How long social collaborative active learning takes is in the direct connection with what digital capabilities students bring to the table. If you ask yourself, what do students need to successfully engage and complete and enjoy this program? And what skills and motivations do we need to help them build? You will start workload mapping a lot better. And that is a continuous effort to make sure that we're not asking them to spend longer or work harder than they should. And there's a variety of things that we're kind of trying to work out. I'll pick a few on the staff side as well. Bringing in those multiple voices at module program level and above, and bringing in student voice into the process. That has been an enormous challenge. It's like, I don't know, conducting an orchestra sometimes. It's a meaningful go from idea into fully developed learning experience and then seeing it run and then improving on it later. That takes a variety of approaches that we're still trying to work out, including the quality assessment part of it that we try to build in as early and as continuously as possible. So a lot of stuff there that we're still trying to kind of go. And the last one is the facilitation. That's at the core of the relational pedagogy. How do you build a community, build a presence, facilitate, help students synthesize, overcome barriers, and meaningfully engage with each other and with the teaching teams and with the content in a three-part conversation? That's something that we're still trying to kind of work out and find better ways of working on. Brilliant. So I'm wrapping up just kind of with a core message here of I hope that you identified and recognized some of those challenges and that some of the things that we shared were useful to you. But I would love to hear from you in terms of strategies, ways of thinking that you've maybe put in place around this process that is supposed to be a collaboration of multiple parts to scale up our offer, but also doing it in a way that is empowering for staff and students. Thank you very much.